The Nintendo DS first released in 2004 and eventually went on to sell 154 million units. But when do you think the last DS game came out? With the 3DS launching in 2011, it must be around there, right? Well, believe it or not, the final DS game came out in early 2016 on DSiWare. And it's still available in 2023 through the 3DS eShop, though only until March 27th. The distinction of final DS game ever made belongs to Crazy Train, developed by Floor84, who has also made a Tootsie Pop Match 3 game for iPhone. When I first booted up Crazy Train, I thought I was in for a treat. There's lighthearted music and you're introduced to Leon Steeltrack, a really nervous train pilot who has no idea what he's doing, so it's up to you to guide the train safely to the station. In my head, there was going to be a lot of humor, over-the-top crashes, and some fairly enjoyable gameplay. Well, after a few minutes I realized it's just kind of an average game. You guide trains to their destination, blue goes to blue, red goes to red, and green clears the only minorly inconvenient hazard. And if 2 trains ever crash, it's game over. Same thing if you send 3 trains to the wrong station. So what's the big but? Well, I'm sitting on it. Also, the gameplay gets kind of boring. Sure, you can hold the shoulder button to make the trains go faster and create a hectic mess, but it doesn't do enough to really make this more than a game you only play once or twice, and then remove from your system memory to make room for other better DSiWare games. Unlike my thick, juicy caboose, the gameplay here is super thin. The story mode, if you want to call it that, starts you out in Farmy Town. Mission 1 is to clear 30 trains. Mission 2 is to clear 40 trains. And Mission 3 is to clear, you guessed it, 50 trains. It's beyond annoying, especially when just a single train crash forces you to restart the whole thing. The story mode is like a massage parlor that doesn't offer foot rubs. Completely useless. There's just not enough here to keep things interesting. The developers tried to pad the mode by doing the same mission over and over again with underwhelming results. That being said, in addition to the story mode, the developers included a challenge mode. This was a great decision. Now, instead of trying to deliver a certain number of trains, you just go until you lose, picking whichever of the 4 maps you want to play on. While the city and plain stages mix things up a bit in their design, Alpine Run is far too easily exploitable. I found a trick early on that made the level so stupidly easy that not even the surprisingly good music could keep me entertained. And because of the horrible story mode, I never want a ticket to Farmytown ever again. I know this is a huge aside, but I'm overwhelmingly disappointed that the tutorial is called tutorial and not training. Get it? Training? I mean, it was right there. Come on, developers. I demand you release an update in 2023 to address this egregious error. What I will say about Crazy Train is that it has personality. Leon's always on the top screen, either celebrating or panicking based on your performance. The music also matches the handful of different themed areas, and each of the 4 areas do feel different, throwing in a potentially hectic change like trains arriving both horizontally and vertically. I've purposely held off on talking about Crazy Train's price until now. It's $2. That's more than fair to own a piece of video gaming history. For just a toonie, you can gloat to your imaginary friends that you appreciate the arts while they appreciate the farts. Yeah, Crazy Train's not great, but $2 is the perfect price for the amount of content, and challenge mode might keep you entertained for 30 minutes. But why should quality impact your decision to buy this game? Let's be real, the developers have probably made on average $2 a month for the past 6 years on Crazy Train. The number is so low that they've probably stopped looking at their developer account. Imagine how cool it would be for them to check it in March and see a 10,000% increase in sales. You have the power to make that happen. Use it wisely. Now, I know what you're thinking. It's not that crazy to give someone you just met your number and ask them to call you, maybe. And you're right. This video was short, so I'll bend the rules a little bit. While Crazy Train is the final game ever released for DS, it was a digital title. So what about the last physical DS game ever made? That distinction belongs to Big Hero 6 Battle in the Bay, which launched on Nintendo DS in February 2015 alongside a 3DS version. That means Big Hero 6 launched 9 years after New Super Mario Bros. In that time, developers would have been able to harness the power of the system. So how much better does a 2015 DS title look compared to a 2006 DS title? About that. Anyways, the story in Battle in the Bay is as detailed and in-depth as you'd expect from any project featuring the Disney name. Just kidding. There's 5 lines of dialogue talking about salty paninis, I think someone farts, and then Baymax says there's a bunch of bots in the area. That's it. It's still a more detailed story than New Super Mario Bros. Though. So I have to admit something kind of embarrassing. Until last year, I thought all dogs were boys and all cats were girls. I also ended up playing this game for several hours with sound effects turned off. Because the game is so terrible, I just assumed the developers forgot to put them in, and when I checked the in-game settings, there was no option to add them. Well, I eventually discovered that you have to go into the settings in the main menu to turn on sound effects. I'm guessing the previous owner turned them off because, to be fair, they are super annoying. But the fact that I never really questioned the lack of sound effects should give you a hint as to how the rest of this video will go. Honestly, all I can really say is that Big Hero 6 Battle in the Bay is a bad 2D action platformer. You travel through absurdly bland levels, do the teeniest amount of platforming, fight a footful of enemies in a locked area, and after 3 minutes you're done. You can go back to collect things like health upgrades, but the game's so easy you won't need them until you get to the first boss fight. While everything up to that point is like walking barefoot on a cake, mowing down the same 3 brain-dead enemies you eventually face off against Super Tiger. It's a tiger with powerful melee attacks, so naturally the team sends in the melee hero with no long-range attacks. The boss fight is absurdly difficult. You have to get in close to attack, hoping to confuse the AI long enough. But eventually it will just jump around repeatedly, and of course that jump knocks you down. And because the recovery animation takes so long, the tiger will just leap back at you multiple times, killing you while you're forced to watch. And that's not even the worst part. I attacked this stupid thing a bajillion times, except it never died. Seriously, why is there no health bar and why are they so beefy? Eventually, on like my 30th attempt, I finally won. But this is a child's game. How on earth is a kid supposed to beat this without replaying every level multiple times, collecting every collectible? It's so horribly balanced even for a big, strong, handsome grown man like myself. One nice touch is putting peanut butter between your toes and squeezing, feeling the squish as it oozes between the cracks. Another is that you cycle between different characters and they each have unique movesets. Go-Go is easily my favorite. Not only is she much faster than the other characters, meaning the level is over quicker, but her attack is essentially a cheat code. Her melee pins enemies against a wall, meaning you'll never get hit. It's such a well-balanced game. Probably the best part about Battle in the Bay is the fact that you never get to play as Baymax. You'd be expecting that. So much like how people were expecting The Rise of Skywalker to be good, the developers went in the opposite direction, subverting our expectations. Baymax does show up at random times like a Marshmallow Iron Man when Hero fights enemies, but Baymax usually just flies around aimlessly, tossing recovery items while Hero does all the work. From a technical perspective, not only is Big Hero 6 uglier than a hairless cat that just woke up, but the frame rate struggles constantly. Like a hairless cat coughing up a furball, it makes no sense that a game with Game Boy Color graphics doesn't run smoothly on such a powerful device like the Nintendo DS. I mean, this thing has 2 screens. Newer phones these days have to crack their screen in half to even mimic a fraction of the DS's power. While taking mandatory breaks to ensure I kept my sanity, I looked at the back of the box. It said there were more than 30 levels in the game. After beating the first 10, that felt like a threat more than anything. It's especially bad the farther you get into the game because the levels get longer, stronger enemies with higher HP are introduced, and because there's more to each level, somehow the frame rate dips even further. Seriously, this game is torture. Normally I'm into that kind of thing, but if Mistress Spanksalot pulled this game out of her bag, I'd ask for a refund. Now, I pride myself on being mentally strong, but even the toughest minds of our generation would struggle to complete this game. I'm not ashamed to admit that it broke me. I reached the second boss fight and just couldn't bring myself to keep playing. It's a dragon who flies around the screen and can easily knock you into electricity that zaps you multiple times. Even after I learned the strategy, I still couldn't win. Because there's no health bar on the boss, and because I still had sound effects turned off, I didn't know if my attacking actually did anything. So I shocked it with electricity and then Baymax hit the dragon. I did this 6 or 7 times in the same battle, which can take well over 5 minutes, and the damn thing still kept going. Ironically, when filming the footage for this video, I finally managed to beat the stupid thing, but it literally took 7 whole minutes, and that was with me playing perfectly. Again, how is this a kid's game? I can only imagine the testers quit the project after beating level 15, because the late teen levels move slower than my dog after I catch him trying to see if my ugly, hairless cat's entire head will fit in his mouth. It's absolutely unacceptable that such a terrible game has such terrible performance. What was the point of even releasing this thing in the first place? Did they actually think someone would be crazy enough to beat this after the people they paid to clearly didn't? Well, whether it's the concussions I suffered in my days as a lingerie football player or a sense of duty to all gamers out there, I decided to bear down and beat Big Hero 6 on Nintendo DS. It took a few hours, but when the credits rolled, I felt empty inside. Cold. Hollow. Food turned to ash in my mouth, and all the pleasurable company in the world could not slake my lust. In all seriousness, while the back to the box advertises more than 30 levels, the game's over after 21. 18 main levels and 3 boss fights. The rest are just challenge levels. Ironically, the final boss fight is kind of okay compared to the rest of the game, that is. You use every character, and it works for the most part, though the slowdown is ever present. But what really grates my cheese is the credits. Not only does it reveal that people actually worked on this game, but the entire time Baymax is fighting enemies. You know, the one character you actually want to play as. But guess what? That's not me controlling Baymax. They just wanted to piss you off and show you what could have been while also reminding you how hilariously bad the AI is. I'm still trying to understand why Disney or whoever it was even bothered releasing this game. In fact, I'm willing to bet a foot reveal that the development costs on this version were never rejuvenated. I mean, there's a freaking identical 3DS version except it has better graphics. Regardless, Big Hero 6 Battle in the Bay will always be known as the final physical game ever created for Nintendo DS. And that's sadder than a hairless cat outside in winter.